a public sector account manager here with AdCap Network Systems. We're a Cisco systems reseller, largely focused in the southeastern United States area, have very large footprints in Georgia and Florida, working on South Carolina and Tennessee. I wanted to kind of just quickly familiarize you guys with our company. We've been around since 2002, and we actually started our practice with just a few folks, a couple of engineers and a salesperson, selling Cisco Unified Communications as an on-premise solution. As Cisco acquired Tandberg and other companies along the way, we've migrated that practice over to video and telepresence, contact center, and other areas as well. Wanted to thank you guys again for joining us. I think that the primary focus of today's conversation is how unified communications plays in the K-12 state technical college systems and universities, where we have numerous customers throughout the Southeast. Due to budget constraints over the last number of years, we found that what originally was largely a CPE or customer-based and managed unified communications solution, we're starting to have to find other avenues in order to put that communications platform in place. So today what we're here to talk about is our hosted cafe offering. And the beautiful thing about this is it's largely like what we would offer you guys on-premise, managed by you as a customer, only we would do it in a hosted fashion. And to make matters better, it's actually funded by E-rate, large portions of it by Priority 1, and smaller portions by Priority 2 as well. So I've got Joe and Rosanna from our Hosted Cafe team with me here today, and we're going to kick it off with Joe. And what Joe's going to do is he's going to kind of walk you guys through our hosted collaboration solution, the inner workings of that, the features, the functions, the connectivity, how all that works. And then Rosanna's going to jump in here a little bit later in the presentation and talk about E-rate and all the wonderful forms, processes, and procedures for making all that work, because obviously you guys want to be able to consume the technology, but it's also important to understand the funding sources and the ins and outs, which can be complicated at times, and it seems ever-changing with our federal government from a funding standpoint, E-rate. So without any further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce Joe to kind of kick it off and take us from there.
So this is Joe. So we're going to talk a little bit about hosted collaboration solution, which is Cisco's hosted voice, a little bit about cost of ownership, and then we'll get into Rosanna's presentation on E-rate and some business drivers. So the first things folks always ask, we're talking about hosted connectivity, is how we connect to the cloud. So what do we do? Is it voice over the internet? Do I use my broadband connection? Can I use existing connectivity? So all kinds of ways to connect up to the data center when we're talking about hosted connectivity. So this picture kind of shows a traditional or even IP phone solution for a school. I have my basic internet connection, I have my voice connectivity, my PSTN or public switch telephone network, and I have PRIs, I have analog, I have T1. So this is really a typical connection today of what you might have for a traditional or IP phone on-premise solution. We're very typical. Maybe now I have a campus environment, so now I involve a wide area network. I could have fiber, Metro, Ethernet, or some kind of public carrier too, like an AT&T, a CenturyLink, some other carrier. So this is really typical of what I might have today in a traditional on-premise solution. I may also have voice at these other schools too. So I have PSTN connectivity, maybe some copper analog lines, or even PRIs out at the elementary, the high schools, the middle school. So multiple PSTN connections, very typical. So now I want to connect to the hosted cafe data center. Maybe I'm thinking about doing hosted voice. So what do I do? Very typically, I'll do some kind of MPLS private circuit and do SIP trunking. We port your phone numbers over. You still keep them, but this is what we will typically do. This is really nice for a couple of reasons. Generally speaking, I can get rid of all those PRI type circuits. I can save cost. I can centralize my trunking. I can get the exact number of voice channels that I need. So with the PRIs, I have multiple circuits. I'm buying them 23 at a time. So maybe I'm over trunked in that scenario. So with SIP, I can buy exactly what I need. So I'm saving costs that way. I also have redundancy. So if I have a failure with my MPLS circuit, I can route traffic right over the internet immediately. So I don't have to call the carrier for that rerouting and wait. That can be an instant failover to my internet circuit. So I have a failover mode, which is really nice. So this is typically what we may do going to the cloud. This shows a scenario where I'm doing hosted collaboration solution or hosted voice with existing trunking. In this scenario, maybe I have contracts under my local PRI. So they're under contract, maybe have a year or two to go. So it doesn't make sense to do SIP trunking yet. So I can reuse my existing telco. I still have to connect up to the data center, so I would probably just do some kind of a VPN, a virtual private network, across an internet circuit, just so I can register my phones and play my voicemail back in the data center. So I'm going over the internet here. There is no quality of service because I'm over the internet, but all my voice calls are going out these green circuits, right? So I'm not really worried about my quality of service. I'm just doing phone registration, and I'm listening to voicemail in the data center, so not a big deal. If you don't have the broadband or the internet, we can also do a private circuit for that phone registration and voicemail playback, and I'm still using my local PSTN. We'll do this scenario if the customer is under contract, or for some reason the customer is in a really weird spot in the country where they have a telco provider that doesn't allow for local phone number portability. So that's a real common scenario in that instance. If I have a wide area network where the wide area network carrier is a kind of a public carrier like an AT&T, a Charter, a Level 3, a CenturyLink, we have all those carriers into our data centers. So we can plug right into your private network and do SIP trunking that way. So that is a very common thing for us too. We see that a lot more in the commercial space than the public sector because generally speaking, schools have more of a private fiber scenario. But sometimes if you have a large geographic campus environment, you may have a public entity like these wide area network carriers. We can just tie right into the wide area network and do SIP trunking that way. It's a really nice scenario. You save on transport costs. You have a failover with the internet. So this is a really nice way to go too. So just kind of wrap up the whole connectivity thing. You can reuse all your existing telco circuits. You can use a private connection like MPLS. You get quality of service. You use SIP trunking. You can save costs. You can fail over to the internet. What's nice about that is there's different ways to connect. There's different transport modes. It can be T1, BS3, Ethernet, fiber. And you can also use broadband. So it can be voice over the internet. We have lots of customers that do that. If you have large broadband circuits, you can certainly run voice across them. It can be cable, fiber, Ethernet. I mean, if you have a broadband circuit running out to the bus garage, you can certainly hang a couple of phones out there and use that circuit. No need to do, analog trunks out there. So any questions on that? I'll just keep going. So typical end user equipment, it's just really phones. There's about 30 different flavors of Cisco handsets that are supported on their hosted voice, all different flavors. Integrated series routers, so just a voice gateway to connect to those different types of circuits. And then typically power over Ethernet switching. It doesn't need to be Cisco switches, but power over Ethernet, just kind of plug those phones in and they're powered up and ready to go. You really don't even need to have PoE. The phones can be powered locally as well.
And that's really it. That is your end user equipment. Very, very simple. Some nice benefits about Hosted Cafe. So 24/7 proactive monitoring and support of the network. We put a little 1RU server probe on the network. We're supporting your local area network, so all that switching, all the wide area network, all those voice gateways, routers, and all those carriers. So we don't care who the telco providers are, we are supporting those for you. So we're your IT help desk on all that back end, of course, all of the hosted support architecture, plus all of on-site, so all the LAN, the WAN, all that equipment, we are taking care of that for you proactively. If there's a switch port that goes down at 3 o'clock in the morning, we're going to know about it, and we're going to actively engage to take care of that. We give you moves, adds, changes, so Max. You have a phone that needs to be updated, name changed on it, unified messaging mailbox, you want to make a move, add, change, you just send us an email, you can open up a ticket, or you can just call us, and we'll take care of that for you. The system is yours, too, so if you want to have an administrator that wants to do those moves and changes, they're welcome to do that. It's as simple as just giving us a call or open up a ticket, and we can take care of that for you. There's no charge for that. Like I mentioned, SIP trunking, definitely something to take a look at. If you have multiple PRIs, you know, it's worth looking at SIP trunking to reduce those PRIs, save costs, and get that redundancy as well. The a la carte options available with Hosted, so you pay for exactly what you're using with Hosted. So if you have 502 users, that's what you pay for, not the growth of maybe 600 with a traditional like on-premise system. And then the applications too are all a la carte, which I'll get into in a second. Rosanna will share some P1 E-rate success stories with you in a couple of slides, but we just had some great implementations and customers just taking advantage of the P1. We have redundant data centers and operation centers. So this is built out in 2 different redundant data centers, and then we have staffed 24/7 operation centers that are taking care of your network for you. We are ITIL and SOC 2. So you may not know what these certifications are, but ITIL is just a service provider methodology and process that we follow, always improving the way that we support our customers. And then SOC 2 is a security audit. It's around how things are protected physically in our data centers and then your information as well. So a very stringent audit that we go through every year. And then evergreen technology. So this is always new. You always get the newest and latest and greatest features, upgrades, software versions. We're on about every 18-month cycle. We do upgrades, so you don't pay for those. You don't pay for the labor to go into that. The newest features, you don't pay for those. You just get those automatically, so you're always on the latest and greatest. A little bit about applications and features. This is a really complete eye chart, but really it's 2 types of users with Cisco hosted voice, a foundation user and a standard user. The foundation is a kind of a public space user. You get things like single number reach, all kinds of voice features. It supports all the different phones. It's really meant for that kind of a public space, non-person. You don't get unified messaging, probably the biggest thing there. And then the standard user, I get 10 device licenses, I get single number reach, unified messaging, I get a Jabber client, which I'll talk to you about in a second. So if you're a person, you're probably going to be a standard user. I mentioned the a la carte just a couple of slides ago. So with hosted, applications are all a la carte. You pay for exactly what you want on a per user basis. So an auto attendant, an IP desktop fax. So if you have analog fax machines now, it's a good time to get rid of those if you're thinking about going hosted. A desktop fax is very simple to use. It's browser-based. So on the inbound side, we just port the phone number over, your fax number over, and point that to an email address. That could be
your personal email, or it could be a very generic email that goes to 10 different people, and a fax comes in and it just goes as a PDF to your email address. On the outbound side, you just go to a web browser and you pick from a drop-down list of cover sheets. You input the fax number you want to fax to. You upload your document, hit submit, and you just fax, a document. Very, very simple to use. The attendant console is a software-based receptionist phone. It gives you presence to everybody in the district. It's all drag and drop interface, so it kind of replaces that big kind of 40-button console phone, but a lot more features and functionality. Emergency responder, if we're doing your SIP trunking for you, we support E911 down to the location, the physical address, and even down to the classroom level if you want us to. Single wire paging, that's an application that allows you to page through the phones. It sends broadcast audio and text messages or text to the display of the phone, and also a lot more, which I'll get into in a second. And then contact center and call recording is applications that probably you'll see a whole lot of in schools, but it's applications that allow for call queuing and call recording of folks. Cisco Jabber is an application that comes with that standard user I just mentioned a second ago. So this is an application. It's an instant messaging client. You can text to folks inside of the district or even outside of the district. It sets on your desktop, your iPad, your tablet, your mobile phone. You can have presence to everybody in the district. You can launch a video call. You can see your inside of your voicemail. I mean, it just really does everything. It's a really tool that allows you to collaborate with everyone, just like it says on this slide. So a really nice, powerful collaboration tool. So this is all about security, this slide. So that application that does paging to your phone also has all kinds of other features built really around security and safety. So one push button notification you can broadcast to all phones, or maybe an intruder alert. It'll broadcast audio and text. You can have pre-recorded messages that'll broadcast, maybe to overhead IP speakers. You can trigger door locks. You can have emergency notification in there. If somebody dials 911, it'll alert internal security teams. You can actually record the 911 call. You can have weather alerts. It'll launch mass email. It'll dial out to everyone's phones, cell phones, the home phones, the mobiles. You can kind of think of maybe how you want to alert. It'll kind of broadcast that for you in all kinds of different media. So P1 E-rate, what is eligible? The attendant console I talk about, auto attendance, press 1 for this, press 2 for that. The emergency responder, the management of E911 down to the classroom level, that is not, but notification out to the P staff, so by physical address, is that paging application broadcasting through the phones, that is desktop faxing, contact center and call recording, that is not, but typically we don't really see that in schools. All the hosted voice implementation, the pro services for that is all the hosted voice licensing. So basically the hosted voice system is the hardware like IP phones and the power over Ethernet switching. That is not P1. But the voice gateways are if they're managed, which this is a managed service, so you had to buy a voice gateway to connect up to the PSTN. That would be P1. Like we say at the bottom, kind of defer to your E-rate consultant for all those devices and services. So a slide on cost of ownership. Any questions so far? I know I'm kind of going a little fast, but.
I don't think so, Joe.
Okay. So it's kind of really an apples and orange comparison. It's snowball your own driveway when you're looking at kind of on-premise. You got to buy all the equipment. You have the annual maintenance. You have the repairs, the break fix. It's that ongoing
support, of that equipment. When you're comparing that to the plow service of, the $300 per year or that hosted service, we include all the break fix, we include the upgrades, we include the move adds and changes. We're taking care of that for you for that one monthly fee. So it really is that kind of apples and oranges comparison. Here's a comparison, a real-life comparison for a customer that we worked with last year. They were an 80% E-rate school district, 250 phones. They had existing power over Ethernet LAN. This was their current situation. So they had an older PBXs, really weren't spending anything on them other than maintenance. They had $1,300 a month in voice circuits. The maintenance was $1,000. They had LD charges of $200 a month. So their E-rate was basically on just their voice circuits and LD of $1,200 a month. So they were spending $1,300 a month. We proposed on-premise Cisco. The equipment was $105,000. That was, I believe, 5 years of licensing in that as well. The setup was $20,000. So the subtotal was $125,000. Kept the same voice circuits. Maintenance on that. So putting our hosted cafe support on top of that was $1,340 a month. LD charges was $200. So the E-rate was really the same. The reimbursement $1,200. So subtotal was $1,640, and then the lease on that hardware was another total of $4,140 a month. Then we look at hosted cafe. So just really phones basically and a couple of gateways were $22,600 for all the equipment. The setup fee was really the same. So whether we're doing on-premise or hosted, it's really the same implementation for us, just living in a different spot. What's nice about the implementation on the E-rate side is that's reimbursable. So 80% on that number dropped it down to a $26,600 subtotal. We did some SIP trunking for this customer, so that was wrapped up into the hosted cafe service, which was $48.50 a month. Maintenance and support, that's really included in the hosted cafe service as well as the LD charges. So the E-rate reimbursement was $38.80 on that $48.50. So that dropped that subtotal down to a really small $970 a month. And then we wrap in the lease on the equipment. They were at $1,500 a month. It's a little bit more than what they were paying originally, but it's all new equipment. They get 24/7 support on their LAN and WAN, evergreen technology, moves, adds, and changes. So really a huge difference for this customer compared to what they had. So pretty nice scenario. I think with that, I'm at the end. So I'll probably drop off this crappy little phone, and I'm going to turn it over. No, I'm not going to drop off, but I'll turn it over to Roseanne.
My name is Roseanne Bistis. I'm the Director of Education Vertical for Hosted Cafe, and very excited about the timing of P1, leveraging P1 E-rate and the movement towards hosted VoIP. I think the timing's right now, and over the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to be covering a brief update on the status of E-rate funding, why the movement from Priority 2 to Priority 1 funds for hosted voice, and then we're going to drill down into a couple published case studies for Cisco, the customer's challenges and the benefits, and why they moved to hosted VoIP, leveraging P1 E-rate. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, a quick overview of the E-rate. E-rate provides $2.3 billion to schools and libraries. It's based upon a free and reduced lunch percentage program where the neediest applicants receive 90% down to 20% discount level. And this means that Priority 1 is always funded based upon that. It's two service categories, and for this session, Priority 1 is the Internet and carrier services for telecommunications. And then, as per USAC definition, hosted interconnected VoIP is also allowable under that section of Priority 1. And then we have Priority 2, which is the traditional internal connections maintenance, such as on-premise PBXs and voice equipment. If we look at what has happened traditionally with Priority 2, It's been funded at an 85% up to 90% over the last couple years, but due to the demand in Priority 1 fundings as well as the increase in the number of applications, Priority 2 percentage level has moved to a high of 90%, which means only those that are at a 90% free and reduced lunch level will be funded for Priority 1 or for Priority 2 this year. And what does this mean? So where are we headed? I think with all schools, the pace has picked up, and our communication needs to be live. It's about it's greater now than it's ever been that I've seen over the last 30 years. The ability to collaborate, to empower students, teachers. They want to be able to see who's available, and when they do, they want to be able to act and interact, as Joe stated, who's available and how we see them seamlessly across all applications. And we're seeing the two worlds come together with P2 funds shrinking and P1 requests and allowing school districts to get not just 8 to 5, but 24 by 7 by 365 with a hosted voice solution is very powerful for them, and also to get the latest and greatest technology when they want it and when they need it. So it's another way to look at this, just to depict the difference between P1 hosted VoIP versus P2 on-premise VoIP. All districts are eligible to receive hosted P1 services from 20% to 90%, and they will be funded. PowerLAN switchers are not P1 eligible, but the services, the applications, all bundled together, ongoing are. Handsets are not eligible for P1 services, but all other applications that qualify under E-rate are eligible. Remember, P1 funds get funded first, and then if funds are depleted, these applications, as you probably have seen in the past and now moving forward, will be denied and not funded. As we look at the application process, I'll just point out a few differences between the two. You do not need an approved technology plan for Priority 1. You do for Priority 2 for VoIP. And then as you file Form 470s, you can file multiple Form 470s, one for Priority 1 and one for Priority 2. In fact, last year we had several of our customers who were unsure about whether they were going to get funding. They were at an 83 and one was at an 87%. They were denied Priority 2 funding the year before, and they filed for both forms. They were approved for Priority 1. The funding year has begun, and we're in the midst of the heaviest season for filings of Form 470. Once it's posted, it can be posted as simply as a posting on a website or a formal RFP. The bids are evaluated in a form. An award called a Form 471 is filed to USAC. Once the services begin, a file Form 486 stating that they have begun, and you have your choice of whether you want to do a bear or a SPI, which is a bear is where you submit the invoice to USAC and then you submit the payment to your service provider, versus a Form 470 SPI is different, where the service provider provides the payment, the invoice to USAC, and then submits your percentage of the cost to you. We have a lot of our customers choosing to do the Form 474. Then receiving discounts. If you've filed for both, you're going to get your funding quicker with Priority 1 than a Priority 2, especially with the limitations filing this year. So key takeaways. Hosted voice is E-rate P1 eligible. All districts can apply. There's limited P2 funding. And then I'm going to drill a little bit deeper into selecting your service provider. This is important to make sure you have the right service provider that can, support you ongoing. It's not just about voice, but it's also about your data and your other needs. And you can file multiple Form 470s. If you're unsure, file for both. As Adam stated a little bit earlier in the presentation, there are key business drivers driving us to move towards hosted VoIP, and also there's been a lot of changes in the education delivery system. I've been in the business for over 30 years. In the next 5 years, I agree with industry analysts when they say that it's going to change more than it has in the last 30 years. We're seeing that schools, the results of schools from reports who incorporate collaboration and video into the classroom are very impressive. A decline in dropout rates and a greater interaction with today's students. So why is this happening? I mean, the traditional classroom in the past, as educators, we agree that theory, blended learning can outperform the traditional classroom because the traditional classroom we've done a layered on top of education approach. When we need mobility, we applied it, and video, we applied it. However, this technology available could not keep up with the demands, and the results was issues in being able to seamlessly work across all these types of new technology. As we looked at our solution, and we've been doing this for several years, we were one of the first forerunners with Cisco to implement it across the schools and libraries. And Cisco provides all 6 technology elements because they are the leader in the industry in setting the standards for not just voice and data, but also with open system protocols, which is very important. And just a quick slide here to show that even the latest reports from Gartner on the June Magic Quadrant study recommends Cisco as the vendor. And why is this important? If you look at all the different vendors in here that manufacture full unified communication, you still have to be able to interop with your current environment. As Joe stated earlier, you don't have to have a Cisco installed base. However, you have to have PoE equipment and you have to be VoIP ready. In doing this, you need to look at your environment and your manufacturer as the ability to interoperate not just with the voice, but also with the data in other environments, which is important for your established investments that you have in your communication areas. So what challenges are we seeing out there? As I visit the schools across the U.S., you know, we're hearing from the state, from the students and parents, the requirements to bring your own device, to one-on-one, core standards, performance improvement. The demands are rapidly increasing. And on the other side, you have your IT staff that's, many of you are on here, that are challenged with the integration, interoperability, not just for data, but now for voice, mobility, and video, as well as security policies and managements across all different media. It can be very challenging. And what I'm hearing from the schools is that they're stretched. New technologies are coming out, but then their on-premise equipment, they struggle to integrate and operate and keep up. We have one school that was 6 levels behind on the upgrade for their PBX to refresh it. Excuse me. And many schools are looking at and evaluating what is core versus context. What is aligning to their business education, you know, and what is context, not part of their competency? What can be outsourced or supported in another way, such as voice services, which could be offloaded to a service provider? And that's why we see these 4 key drivers: financial drivers, centralizations, the ability to scale, and strategic advantage. In the financial drivers, it's about OPEX versus CAPEX. School districts are already familiar with recurring monthly charges from existing voice carriers. And that's why we see the voice carriers embraced voice-hosted VoIP and are moving forward with that. So it doesn't make sense for them to financially move to, it makes sense for them to financially move to a CAPEX, from a CAPEX to a traditional OPEX spend. As we will see in the next couple slides with the case studies, many schools are several versions behind in upgrading their on-premise equipment. They don't have the time or the expertise to keep up with it. They're also being faced with major challenges for their initiatives and to be implemented in their states. It's about you know, simplifying E-rate filings too. For those that have filed P1 and P2, you know how complex it is. By moving to a P1, from a P2 to a P1 submission process, the E-rate process and submission becomes much easier. You can have one filing for maintenance, supports, and voice instead of multiple submissions. Besides the financial drivers, we're talking about the increased business continuity you get with hosted versus on-premise. about disaster recovery, and I think the most important thing on this slide to point out is the 24/7, 365 support, which schools typically were 8 to 5, but it's becoming more and more important for them to be able to get in touch with someone at any time. And then we provide a TCO analysis that can show you whatever choice you make, whether it be on-premise, managed, or hosted. We come in and provide you that analysis for you if you're interested to show what's the best for you to choose the best solution for you. And then this comes with also service level agreements. As we look at Rittner School District, that's 6,300 students, they had issues resolving, had a lot of finger pointing back and forth from their voice, their data, and their multiple vendors and service providers. They wanted a centralized single point of contact. They had limited IT staff. They just lost one of their IT staff, which we're seeing from a lot of the schools, and the resources and expertise to maintain their on-premise voice equipment. Over the last 7 years that they had the equipment, they were not able to perform any upgrades, and they were many upgrades behind then. They decided to file both a Form 470 for Priority 1 as well as for Priority 2. They were at a high of 86% discount level and had been denied Priority 2 funding. By moving to a hosted cafe for Cisco HCS, they actually reduced the complexity and time. As I mentioned earlier, they were filing multiple E-rate submissions. They consolidated their phone services, carriers, and system maintenance under E-rate Priority 1 for funding. The assistant superintendent, who we have several quotes from this, was also served on the state's Homeland Security and E911 Commission, so it was very important for him for disaster recovery and business continuity. The system was installed in the late May time frame, and I don't know if many of you heard there was tornadoes that hit the Midwest, and this school, Rittner School, received extensive damage with flooding that occurred in one of the buildings, and this happened where the voice equipment, on-premise equipment, was previously housed. Superintendent mentioned that if they had not moved to hosted at that time, he said it would take several months to recover, and this would have incurred significant cost to the school district. If you look at prospective charter schools, they had faced similar issues that Rittner had, and they recognized the value of unified communication. They had evaluated several hosted service carriers. They wanted to be able to collaborate across multiple school locations. They also were a couple upgrades behind. They did not have the capital outlay to refresh their systems and to move forward. They also wanted the service provider to monitor not just their voice, but also their data network. It was important for them to be able to have that single point of contact. In doing this, they were able to keep up with the latest technologies. They were a state that required enhanced 911, the ability to locate not just at the building level, but to the room level. And when we helped them with their ROI, they came in with a 25% monthly cost savings with HCS over their other voice solutions. I'm not going to go through these, what we hear from our customers and the quotes. I just wanted to point out that from the top down, we are compensated on customer satisfaction, and that's very important when you align to a service provider. We want to be able to make sure you're making the right choice, whether it's on-premise managed or hosted, such as Hosted Cafe, and we'll be glad to follow up with a discovery session to help you understand what to do, what's the difference between Priority 2 and Priority 1, as well as what's the best choice for you. So when I meet with a lot of schools, they ask, what do we need to look at when we're wanting to do hosted, especially with our service providers? I think you need to look at service providers that have the experience. How long have they been in not just in the voice, but also in the data? What is their expertise and capabilities? Do they understand E-rate? And when you're working across communications, how will they get involved with your staff and helping you not with just telephony, but with all the other things that will be layered on, and not just layered on, integrated, such as conferencing, messaging, video, and mobility. And then support as a single point of contact. As you moved into doing hosted or doing VoIP on-premise, you realized the importance of the quality of service and the need to be able to support both types of infrastructure. The service is evergreen. You can upgrade to the new technologies when and where you want them and when you want them. As Joe stated, it's a la carte. Survivability is important. It's not if a disaster will happen, it's when it does happen, and how do you get that? What is the design for you? And we will work with you in determining what's best, as Joe was talking about, whether it's survivability, SRST, or MPLS, whatever route you want to take in your design. And then label correctly. We've seen so many incidents over the last couple of years where it's not labeled with interconnected VoIP or it's in the wrong category. The new Form 470 does have a combined telecommunication and internet, so it should be a lot easier moving forward, but just make note of this. For the next steps, schedule a discovery session. We want to make sure your network is VoIP ready. What is your redundancy design for business continuity? Your voice features and requirements. All schools are different in what their needs are. We want to make sure we align to what your features and requirements are. And then evaluate your service provider accordingly. How do they help you and get involved with you? And what's their flexibility to manage and maintain your infrastructure as well as your communication? Schedule a cost-benefit analysis. If this is beneficial to you, we will at no charge provide you a TCO, examine what you're doing on-premise versus hosted, as well as your circuits and your cost. And then let us help you in understanding the difference between Priority 1 versus Priority 2 if you need help in that area with E-rate. And that is all I have for the session. I was trying to keep it within our time limit. I want to state from the Hosted Cafe team as well as ADCAP, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it over to Adam.
Thank you, Rosanna. So great information there. I think that we probably hit most of the points that most of the folks on the line would care about. I think it'd probably be a good idea to open it up for questions. If anybody's got anything, we'd love to take those questions now. And if there aren't any questions and you guys think of any later, I would like to definitely provide you guys with some contact information to follow up with us and allow you all to reach out to us at a later date. If there are no questions, I think we can probably wrap it up.